Ellie. You just shamed the person who saved your life. The words struck the room harder than a drop tray. Conversation bled out of the Cedar Creek High cafeteria until only the hum of the soda machine and the stuttering clatter of a fork on linoleum remained. Mike stood in the doorway in his work jacket, steel-toed boots powdered with drywall dust, eyes fixed on his daughter as if keeping her from slipping through the floor. For a heartbeat, Ellie couldn't tell whether the trembling belonged to the fluorescent lights or to her. A sheet cake lay canted on its side between her sneakers and Noah's, frosting blooming across the tile in blue and white smears. Happy birthday, Ellie, reversed and shattered by gravity. Her friends formed a ragged halo around her, half turned toward the spectacle, half turned away so they wouldn't be accused of caring. Tara's phone hovered near her shoulder like a dragonfly, the tiny camera eye open and feeding. Ellie's cheeks burned. She could feel the heat traveling to the tips of her ears, to the hollow at the base of her throat, to the stiff hand she'd yanked back when Noah had reached to steady the cake. He stood a step away, taller than her by an inch but younger in the face, one shoulder lifted as if to make himself smaller. His right foot searched for balance. The left always a beat behind. That familiar hitch that made strangers rearrange their features. The instant flicker of pity, of impatience, of curiosity they thought he couldn't read. Ellie heard herself and hated the timid syllable. The room smelled like ketchup and orange cleaner. Someone coughed. Outside, faint as a memory, a dog barked twice and fell silent. Noah bent to gather the cardboard base, fingers careful, as if the ruined cake were a hurt bird that might fly if handled right. "It's okay," he murmured, not looking up. It slipped. His voice found only her, as if none of the others existed, as if humiliation could be ignored the way a pebble in a shoe could be ignored by changing the way you walked. Ellie swallowed, and the swallow hurt. A dozen eyes kinked her spine. She heard someone whisper, "Is that seriously her brother?" And a quick reply, "He walks weird, doesn't he?" And then a giggle that wanted to be a knife. Tara tilted her phone a fraction for a better angle. "We were just leaving," Ellie said, but the words came out flat, neither command nor apology, something like a closed door you bump into by accident. She wished for the spell of invisibility she'd believed in as a child. Squeeze your eyes shut, count to 5, become air. Instead, she was solid and seen. The birthday girl in a paper crown her friends had insisted she wear and which now felt like a cheap joke. The crown slid on her hair as she turned. The room's cold light made Noah's face look almost translucent. She could hear the hush inside him, the old hush he used when crowds formed, when shoes squeaked on waxed floors, when the world moved too fast for his left foot. "Ellie?" He tried again. A quiet request wrapped in her name. He lifted the cake's cardboard, frosting transferring to his knuckles like paint, and she flinched as if the sweetness might stain her for good. She knew the right thing. She also knew the easy thing. At 17, the easy thing was a habit disguised as survival. Her hand, still damp from the soda can she'd gripped too hard, made a small pushing motion toward Noah without quite touching him, a gesture that said, "Not now, not here." There was a sound then, a soft metal clang from the serving line, a hush over the tables nearest them as if the room itself held its breath. Mike's boots added their weight to the floor. He crossed the distance with the steady purpose he used to move sheetrock in an empty house, one measured step after another. "Dad." Ellie managed, but the syllable broke into two pieces that didn't want to meet. He stopped by the spill of frosting, gaze still anchored to his daughter. Then let it slide to Noah. Then back. The muscles at the edge of his jaw told an old story. For a small eternity no one spoke. Somewhere near the windows, the soda machine thunked a can down its chute. Noah straightened with the empty base in his hands. His mouth twitched into the ghost of a smile, the kind he wore when he thought someone else needed it more than he did. "It's fine," he said, "really. It was just." Tara, polite as a reporter, raised a single brow. "An accident?" The word dripped. The students at her table didn't laugh outright. The sound they made was worse, a humming agreement that promised this moment would be stitched into the afternoon's gossip and the week's memory. Ellie stared at the frosting on Noah's knuckles. She could feel the seconds marching them all somewhere she didn't want to go. She had said, "We were just leaving," because leaving had always been her strategy, like ducking out of a photograph before it got posted, like swapping a seat to avoid being framed with whatever made people talk. But it wasn't the leaving that trapped her. It was the door she would have to walk through afterward, the one with the mirror built into it. Mike's voice, when it came, was level and softer than the sentence deserved. "Ellie." He didn't scold. He called her to attention, the way a coach might call a player to remember the play they both knew by heart. She kept her eyes on the floor. She registered details: how a river of soda crept toward a drain, how someone had drawn a heart into the frosting with a fingertip, how Noah's shoelace had loosened in the chaos, because details were safer than looking at her father. Her friends formed a defensive semicircle at her back, as if they could flatten the world and let her roll over it without scrape. Tara's phone floated closer again until Mike lifted a hand in a small, "not tonight" gesture. The phone retreated a few inches, not out of respect so much as calculation. "Dad, it was my birthday cake," Ellie said. And there it was. A childish defense in a young woman's mouth. She hated herself for it even as she said it. "I know what day it is," Mike replied. There was no heat, only a gravity that pulled her eyes to his. "And I know what matters." She almost said, "What matters is that everyone saw." She almost said, "You transferred him here, what did you think would happen?" She almost used every last brittle word she'd been stockpiling in the name of ease. But the lines at the corners of her father's eyes made something in her unclench, and into that space rushed a draft of cold air, the kind that carries the smell of rain. The cafeteria doors sighed as someone came in behind him, then chose another exit. A custodian with a mop paused, gauged the mess, and waited. As adults learn to wait, for embarrassment to finish its loud work. Noah glanced at the custodian, then down at the floor, then up at Ellie, and something like a request, no, a permission moved across his face. "We can fix this." He looked at Mike and nodded like a soldier asking for a simple order. "I'll clean it up," he said. "It was my fault." The sentence cut Ellie more cleanly than Tara's phone ever could. She heard the scramble of chairs. She heard one of her friends, Megan, whisper, "Just let the janitor handle it." The same tone she used when she told Ellie which blouse didn't read well on camera. Ellie could feel the room waiting for her to choose, perhaps. She bent at the waist then, the paper crown sliding forward and dropping with a papery sigh into the frosting. She scooped the edge of the cake with both hands and felt the cold sweetness in her palm. The first breath she drew at that height tasted like sugar and bleach. "It wasn't your fault," she said, and the words sounded to her own ears like a translation from a language she hadn't spoken in years. Noah's face changed by degrees, a sunrise delayed by cloud, and then he smiled for real, small and patient. Together they lifted ruined letters into the trash bag the custodian opened and held without comment. "Thank you," Noah told him. The man nodded and said, "Happy birthday, miss," to Ellie, as if naming the day might remind everyone to behave like witnesses instead of judges. Behind the glass sneeze guard, a cafeteria worker slipped a fresh stack of napkins toward them across the counter. In the corner, Tara lowered her phone to the tabletop in a private sulk. Her followers would get fewer seconds of spectacle than she'd hoped. Megan shifted beside Ellie, guilt tugging at her lip. "Do you, want a plate?" she asked, too late for plates. Ellie set the cake's last intact corner into the trash bag and wiped her hands on a napkin, then another. Mike hadn't moved. He watched, and what he watched was not the mess but the space between his children closing like a wound. When Ellie looked up, his expression held everything she feared and everything she could still be. "We'll take a rain check on the candles," he said. The line soft enough to let her step onto it. She almost laughed because the ceiling felt like it might crash otherwise. She nodded. The custodian guided the mop through the sugar lake, the clean swathes gleaming and then dulling as they dried. The noise in the room restarted in cautious stitches, a teacher's voice, a chair leg, a whispered apology from no one to no one in particular. Ellie picked up the paper crown, dented and sugared, and folded it once before tucking it into her backpack. She touched Noah's sleeve, and her fingers stayed there, a quiet fact. "Let's go," she said, not to escape this time but to move forward. Mike stepped back to give them room. As Ellie passed him, he rested one rough palm on her shoulder for the length of a breath. Not forgiveness yet, but the promise that forgiveness had a road, and he knew the turns. She thought, "I can walk it, even if I have to learn how." Beside her, Noah limped, and she matched his rhythm without thinking. The two of them finding a pace that was theirs alone as the cafeteria doors eased open to the corridor, and the faint smell of approaching rain. Outside, the corridor smelled of floor wax and pencil shavings. The last bell had already scattered most of the students, leaving only the slow echo of sneakers and the squeak of lockers shutting. Ellie walked beside Noah without a word, her palms still sticky with the ghost of frosting. She could hear the faint uneven rhythm of his steps, the right foot steady, the left dragging a whisper behind it. Every sound seemed amplified: the hiss of the drinking fountain, the ticking of the hallway clock, her own heartbeat trying to outrun the silence between them. They stopped by the double doors that led to the parking lot. Beyond the glass, rain had begun to fall. The thin kind that darkened the asphalt without scent. "You don't have to walk me," Noah said, glancing at her. "Dad's probably waiting in the truck." His tone carried no accusation, only that old politeness that hurt worse. Ellie shook her head, tightening the straps of her backpack. "I want to," she said, and the words surprised her. They stepped into the damp air. The sky hung low and pewter, flattening everything. The lot smelled of gasoline and wet leaves. Mike's pickup waited by the curb, wipers keeping time. Scout's head poked from the back seat window, ears alert, tail thumping at the sight of them. The dog's bark cut through the rain, bright and forgiving. Mike leaned out the driver's window. "Hop in, kids. We'll get takeout." No arguments. Ellie climbed into the front seat, Noah into the back with Scout pressing against his knee. The truck heater exhaled a soft warmth that fogged the windshield. For a few minutes no one spoke. The wipers carved two clean arcs through the blur of drizzle. Mike's hands rested steady on the wheel. The same hands that could lift beams, mend fences, comfort infants. He cleared his throat. "They'll talk about today for a while," he said finally. "High school runs on gossip, not gasoline." Ellie stared at the dashboard. "I made it worse," she said. "You tried to clean it up," he corrected. "That counts for something." Noah scratched behind Scout's ear, pretending to study the raindrops streaking the window. "It really was my fault," he murmured. Mike's glance flicked to the mirror. "We've already settled that, son. Things fall. People do too. What matters is who helps them stand." The truck rolled past Main Street's modest storefronts, hardware shop, diner, post office, all washed in the same gray light. Every town in Ohio seemed to have a Main Street like this, aging with quiet dignity. Ellie watched an elderly couple hurry under a shared umbrella, their steps out of sync but somehow harmonious. The sight tugged something loose inside her, a memory that wasn't fully formed yet. When they reached home, the porch light clicked on automatically, catching the red of the geraniums her mother had planted before she passed away 5 years ago. The house, modest but well-kept, smelled faintly of sawdust and lemon oil. Mike dropped the takeout on the kitchen counter, burgers and crinkle fries from the diner. "Eat first," he said. "Then we'll talk." Ellie unwrapped her burger mechanically. The bun tasted of salt and steam. Noah fed a fry to Scout, who took it gently, tail sweeping the floor. The domestic rhythm was so ordinary it ached. Mike sat across from them, elbows on the table. Eyes on his children. "You both know," he began. Then paused. "Maybe you don't remember the whole of it." The air shifted. Rain tapped the window like fingertips. Ellie looked up, uneasy. Mike's voice softened. "It was 10 years ago. Summer. You were 7, Ellie, and you'd just learned to ride without training wheels." Images flickered behind her eyelids, sunlight on chrome, the jangle of a bell, her own laughter tumbling down the street. "You were racing toward Maine and Willow," he continued. "And the light changed faster than you did. There was a pickup coming from the east. Noah saw before I did. He pushed you clear." Ellie felt the room tilt. She remembered now the slam of her knees on pavement, the scream she thought belonged to someone else, the metallic taste in her mouth. "You were lucky," Mike said. He wasn't. Noah's fork paused above his fries. He didn't look up. "Dad." "No," Mike said gently. "She needs to hear it." The doctors weren't sure he'd walk at all. But he fought through it. Every step since then has been earned. The heater clicked on, filling the silence with warm breath. Ellie's eyes blurred until Noah became two overlapping shapes. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. Mike rubbed a hand over his face. "Because he asked me not to. Said he didn't want you to carry guilt." The simplicity of it hollowed her out. "I treated him like—" "You treated him like you thought the world wanted you to," Mike said. "That's not the same as who you are." Scout nosed at Ellie's hand, whining softly, sensing the tremor in her. She sank her fingers into his fur. "All those times people stared at him," she said. "I just stood there." "Standing's a start," Mike replied. "Now you know why he limps, maybe next time you walk beside him." Rain drummed harder, steady as a heartbeat. Ellie studied her brother. The scar at his temple, the way he held his fork between the first and second finger of his right hand because the others cramped after too long. Details she'd known but never seen. "I'm sorry," she said. He shrugged. Eyes still on the window. "You don't have to be. You were a kid. I'm not anymore." "Then prove it." The words weren't sharp, only practical, like something he'd learned from their father. Ellie nodded. In that small kitchen, the promise felt heavier than any apology. They finished eating without speaking, The kind of silence that rebuilds rather than erodes. When the plates were cleared, Mike rose. "I'll take Scout out," he said. Storm's easing up. He left them alone. The ticking of the wall clock filled the space. Noah leaned back in his chair. "It's weird," he said after a moment. "Everyone looks at me and sees what's wrong. You look at me and see what could go wrong if anyone finds out we're related." "Not anymore," she said quickly. "Today cured me of that." He smiled, tired but genuine. "High school has a short memory. Give it a week." She shook her head. "I don't care how long they remember. I care about what I remember." She stood, restless, pacing toward the hallway. A picture hung there. Her mother holding her as a baby, sunlight falling through a screen door. Beneath it, another frame, her and Noah at a county fair, cotton candy blue on both their mouths. She reached out, tracing the edge of the photo. "You always walked like you owned the ground," she murmured. "Guess I did for both of us," he said from behind her. The phrase broke something open, a laugh that came out half sob. He stood then, leaning slightly to offset his weaker side, and put a hand on her shoulder. "We're good," he said simply. "Don't turn this into a Lifetime movie." She laughed again, wetly. Too late. Outside, Mike's voice called Scout back in. The dog bounded through the door, shaking rain onto the linoleum. The smell of wet fur mingled with the scent of fried onions, oddly comforting. Mike hung his jacket, glancing between them. "All right," he said, pretending nonchalance. "Who's up for cleaning that mess of candles we never used?" Ellie nodded, relieved at the normalcy. Together they sorted the leftovers, wiped the counter, stacked the paper plates. The rhythm of small tasks knit the evening back together. When everything gleamed, Mike opened the back door again. The rain had stopped, leaving a glaze on the porch rail. "Come see this," he said. They followed him outside. The sky had cleared to a pale indigo, the air sharp and new. Across the street, a pair of kids in ponchos laughed, chasing puddles with their boots. Maine and Willow lay 3 blocks away. Invisible but suddenly vivid in Ellie's mind, the crosswalk, the stoplight, the flash of metal. She could almost hear the squeal of tires, the bark of a dog that might have been Scout's grandfather. The smell of wet asphalt pulled her backward and forward at once. "Dad," she said quietly. "How did you? After Mom. After that day. How did you keep everything together?" Mike watched the horizon. "You don't keep it together," he said. "You keep showing up. Eventually, that counts as the same thing." His words settled over them like mist. Scout leaned against Noah's leg, tail sweeping water off the porch. Ellie looked at her brother, at the uneven stance that now seemed more like rhythm than flaw. "You still owe me a race," she said suddenly. "Not tonight," he warned, smiling. "Tomorrow. Sidewalk to mailbox. You'll win." "Maybe," he said. "But you'll run." The porch light flickered once as a moth touched it, and the 3 of them stood there, bound not by apology but by the quiet understanding that life, even limping, still moved forward. Inside, the wall clock chimed 8, marking the distance between what had been lost and what could still be repaired. Ellie felt the weight of that distance and the strange relief of knowing she could walk it, step for uneven step, all the way to morning. By Monday the rain had left behind a faint smell of metal and mud. The week opened like a wound still pink at the edges. At Cedar Creek High, whispers drifted faster than dry leaves, and Ellie could feel them before she heard them. Every corridor carried a version of the story. The birthday meltdown, the cake, the brother with the limp. She kept her eyes forward, counting the tiles under her shoes as if walking could erase sound. The air of the school had changed, or maybe she had. Posters about kindness lined the walls in colors too cheerful to believe. She passed the cafeteria door and felt her stomach turn, remembering frosting melting under fluorescent light. A voice from behind. "Hey, birthday girl. Tara." Ellie stopped, bracing. Tara leaned against the locker, phone in hand, smile tilted. "Saw the footage before it got deleted. You're trending in the group chat. Congrats on your viral debut." Ellie stared at her, measuring the weight of each word she could throw back. But the urge to fight dissolved into something quieter. "Delete it for good," she said. "It's gone." Tara's tone was sweet as rust. "But you can't delete memory, can you?" She walked off, her perfume a cloud of synthetic cherries. Ellie exhaled and turned toward homeroom. Noah was already there when she arrived, sitting near the window, notebook open. He joined her class last week, after transferring from the special ed track into general studies. The teacher had called it inclusion. The students had called it charity. He looked up and smiled. The kind that said, "I'm fine, don't worry." The same one that always disarmed her. She slid into the seat behind him. The morning unfolded with the usual rhythm: attendance, announcements, the scrape of pencils, but beneath it ran a low current of eyes and silence. When the bell rang for gym, Ellie felt dread crawl into her throat. Gym meant teams, meant dodgeball, meant picking sides. Outside, the gym smelled of rubber and chlorine. The coach blew the whistle. Pairs for warm-up laps. Students scrambled, forming quick alliances. Ellie glanced at Noah. He hesitated, scanning for someone free. A cluster of boys snickered near the bleachers. One of them, Bryce, murmured something too low to catch. Noah adjusted his brace and started toward the track alone. Without thinking, Ellie stepped forward. "I'll go with him." The gym quieted a beat, surprise bouncing around like a ball dropped on concrete. Bryce smirked. "Family discount, huh?" The coach shot him a look. "Enough." Ellie and Noah jogged, their pace uneven but steady. After 2 laps, breathless, they slowed to a walk. "You didn't have to," he said. "I did," she replied. "That's what sisters are for, right?" He laughed softly, a sound she hadn't heard in too long. "Guess so." The coach called for dodgeball teams. Tara volunteered as captain, her manicured hand slicing the air. "I'll take Bryce, Megan, and Ellie." Ellie froze. The coach nodded, marking the list. Tara's smile held no warmth. On the other side, the opposing captain pointed to Noah. The lines were drawn. The whistle blew. Rubber balls shot across the court like artillery. Ellie ducked one, threw another, her pulse hammering. Across the line, Noah caught a ball and tossed it back, his movement careful but precise. The game sped up, laughter and shouts ricocheting. Then Bryce aimed low, a cruel grin blooming, and the ball hit Noah's knee brace with a crack that echoed. He stumbled, caught himself on his hands. The gym went silent. The coach moved forward, but Ellie was already running. "Are you okay?" she asked, crouching beside him. He nodded, face pale. "It's fine." The coach's voice barked orders. Game over. But the damage had been done. Tara muttered something to Bryce, a smirk flickering. Ellie rose, shaking. "You think that's funny?" she said. Her voice carried farther than she meant. The gym froze again. Tara's smirk faltered. "It was an accident." "No," Ellie said, every syllable measured. "It was easy." She reached for Noah's arm, helping him up. He limped toward the bench, silence trailing behind them. After class, whispers reignited, softer now, more cautious. Some students looked away when she passed. Others nodded, almost respectful. She didn't know which felt worse. That afternoon, Mike picked them up. Scout's leash coiled on the dashboard. He glanced at Noah's leg. "Everything all right?" "Brace needs adjusting," Noah said. "We'll fix it tonight," Mike replied, tone neutral. The drive home cut through fields turning gold under the Sunday. The silence in the truck was thicker than rain. Ellie kept replaying the look on Bryce's face. The hesitation before the throw, the smirk after. It wasn't just cruelty, it was indifference. The kind that grows when people treat kindness like currency. "Dad," she said quietly. "Does it ever stop? People being like that?" Mike sighed. "Not always. But sometimes they learn who they're hurting. And if they don't? Then you show them." His words hung there, both warning and permission. That night, while Noah worked on homework, Ellie sat at the kitchen table scrolling through the school's online bulletin. A post caught her eye. Community Kindness Week submissions open. Students could nominate peers who'd shown acts of compassion. She read it twice, an idea forming not of revenge but of witness. The next morning, she printed a photo of Noah volunteering at the animal shelter, a place he'd gone every weekend, helping walk rescue dogs. She wrote a paragraph under it. "Some heroes walk differently, but they still move the world forward." She slipped it into the submission box outside the main office. By lunch, whispers shifted. Someone had seen the note. By last period, the principal had read it over the intercom, voice steady. "Kindness can look like courage." One of our own reminded us of that today. No names mentioned, but everyone knew. In the cafeteria, heads turned again, but this time the tone was different. A few clapped. Bryce slouched deeper into his seat. Tara stirred her drink without speaking. Noah looked at Ellie, bewildered. "What did you do?" "Nothing," she said. "Just told the truth." "About me?" "About all of us." He laughed, shaking his head. "You're something else." "Blame Dad," she said. "He started it." That evening, the three of them walked Scout along Main Street. The sun bled out behind the rooftops, leaving a glow like forgiveness. Storefronts reflected their shapes. A father, a daughter, a boy with a limp, a dog trotting between. Ordinary and miraculous. Mike stopped by the crosswalk at Willow, eyes soft. Funny, he said. How life keeps circling back. Cars rolled past, headlights flickering. Ellie watched the light change from red to green and thought about how small choices could rewrite whole chapters. Dad, she said. If people knew everything, the accident, all of it, would it make a difference? He looked at her. Only if you live like it should. The wind carried the faint smell of rain again, or maybe memory. Noah whistled for Scout, who bounded ahead, tugging at the leash, impatient to move. Ellie matched her brother's slower rhythm until their footsteps aligned. For the first time in years, she didn't mind being seen. She felt the town breathing around them, the hum of neon, the laughter from the diner, the heartbeat of a place that might finally be learning, with them, what it meant to walk side by side. The week that followed carried a strange calm, like the quiet after a storm that everyone pretends has passed though puddles still shimmer in the streets. Ellie walked through school halls with her head level, no longer hunting for eyes to dodge. The rumor mill had turned elsewhere, toward a teacher's engagement and the football team's losing streak. Yet peace in high school was a fragile currency, and Ellie could feel its edges fray. On Wednesday morning, as she slid her books into her locker, she caught a flicker on Tara's phone screen, an old video. Grainy but recognizable. Frosting, a broken cake. Noah's startled face. Tara noticed her glance and smiled without smiling. You didn't think it was gone, did you? She whispered. People keep backups. Ellie's throat dried. You said you deleted it. I said it was gone, Tara replied, voice coated in sugar. Same difference. She turned away, the faint smell of cherries trailing after her. For the rest of the day, Ellie moved like someone carrying glass inside her chest. In English class, the teacher's voice became a hum she couldn't catch. Every buzz of a phone felt like a match being lit. By lunch, her nerves were so raw that the sound of trays clattering made her flinch. Noah sat at their usual table near the window, Scout lying obediently under his chair, a new rule the principal had approved after the Kindness Week publicity. He looked content, unaware of the quiet plot unfolding. Ellie forced a smile. Hey yourself. He fed Scout a small biscuit from his pocket. Guess what? Coach wants me to help with the animal therapy program next month. That's great, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Her phone buzzed, one notification, then another. A message from Megan. Tara posted the clip. Says it's context. Ellie's stomach dropped. She opened the link. The 30-second video played in brutal clarity. Noah dropping the cake, Ellie's frozen face. The moment she pulled away. No caption, no defense, just spectacle. Comments bloomed like weeds. I'd hide too, poor kid, sister of the year. The timestamp said 10 minutes ago. The cafeteria around her blurred. Ellie? Noah's voice sounded far away. She locked the phone, shoved it into her bag. We have to go, she muttered. What's wrong? Nothing. Just come on. She stood so fast the chair legs screeched. The room hushed, eyes turned. Noah followed, confusion etched across his features. They left through the side door, the Ohio sunlight too bright after the cafeteria gloom. Outside, wind pressed against them, warm and restless. Ellie, talk to me, he said. Tara posted it again, she answered. Everyone's watching. He stopped walking. So what? So what? She echoed, incredulous. It makes you look like what I am. His tone was calm, but his eyes sharpened. Someone who limps? Someone who dropped a cake? You don't get it. No, you don't. I've been living in that clip for 10 years, Ellie. You're just now seeing the replay. The words sliced clean. She wanted to argue, to explain that it wasn't about the limp or the fall but the cruelty. The endless hunger of people for something to laugh at. But he was already turning away, heading toward the back lot where the maintenance shed stood. She followed, breath unsteady. Noah, please. You can't fix it by running from it. I'm not running. You've been running since I transferred here. He stopped beside the chain-link fence that bordered the football field. The grass smelled of sun and metal bleachers. You said it was different now. It is, she insisted. Then prove it. He gestured toward the school. Go back in there, face them. Or let me. You'll just get hurt. Already did. He said softly. The bell rang in the distance, scattering students through the open doors. Ellie watched their shadows slide across the pavement like fish beneath water. Something inside her shifted, a mix of fear and resolve that felt heavier than guilt. She turned toward the school. "Fine," she said. "We'll both go." The next hour unfolded like a slow march. The halls buzzed with the hum of screens. The video had spread to every phone. When they stepped into the cafeteria again, the chatter dipped, replaced by the electric hush of expectation. Tara sat at her usual table, flanked by Bryce and a few others. Her phone lay face up beside her tray, glowing. Ellie crossed the room, Noah beside her, Scout padding silently at his side. The sound of claws on tile echoed louder than any whisper. Tara looked up, confidence flickering. "If it isn't the stars of the show," she said. "You forgot to tag us." Ellie replied. Her voice trembled but didn't break. "Delete it. Freedom of speech, babe." Bryce chuckled. "Public property." Noah's hand rested lightly on Scout's collar, steadying both the dog and himself. "That's not freedom," he said quietly. "That's cowardice with Wi-Fi." A few heads turned. The cafeteria supervisor appeared by the door but hesitated, reading the room. Ellie took a breath. "You wanted attention, Tara. Congratulations, you've got mine." She reached for Tara's phone. Tara snatched it back, but Ellie was faster, pressing the power button until the screen went black. "That's destruction of property," Tara snapped. "So call the cops," Ellie said. "Tell them you filmed a minor with a disability for laughs." The word disability hung there like a slap. Bryce shifted, muttering. "She's got a point." Tara glared at him, then at Ellie. But the balance had tipped. Students whispered, not cruelly this time but with curiosity, even admiration. The principal entered, drawn by the tension. "What's happening here?" he asked. Ellie held out the phone. "A misunderstanding," she said evenly. Tara opened her mouth to protest, then closed it, face pale. The principal took the phone, promising to review this offline. As he left, the room released a collective breath. Noah exhaled too, shoulders loosening. "That was dramatic," he said. "I learned from the best," she replied, half smiling. He chuckled, shaking his head. "You okay?" she asked. "I think so," he said. "Scout's heart rate's higher than mine, though." The dog wagged once, sensing the easing of danger. The rest of lunch passed in a subdued murmur. By the end of the day, the video had vanished from every feed, replaced by gossip about who was in trouble and who wasn't. But the echo lingered, a hum in the corners of conversation. When they left school, the sky carried the pale gold of early autumn. Mike's truck waited near the curb, Scout leaping in first as always. "Heard there was an incident," Mike said as they climbed in. "Nothing we couldn't handle," Ellie answered. He looked at her, assessing, then nodded. "That's my girl." On the drive home, radio static filled the pauses. Noah watched the fields roll by, the corn high and ready for harvest. "You think they'll stop?" he asked quietly. "Maybe not," she said. "But at least they'll think twice." "About what?" "About what kind of people they want to be." He nodded, eyes distant. The sun dipped behind the trees, turning the road ahead amber. Scout rested his chin on Noah's knee, sighing. Mike adjusted the mirror, catching his children's reflections, one scarred, one learning, both stubbornly intact. "Proud of you," he said simply. Ellie smiled, the words threading warmth through the truck's cool air. As they neared home, the familiar sign for Maine and Willow appeared, the crosswalk gleaming from an afternoon rain. Mike slowed instinctively, eyes flicking to the memory embedded in the pavement. Ellie met Noah's gaze, and for the first time the intersection didn't look like a scar but a reminder. Sometimes survival isn't about escaping the past but walking straight through it. Together. The light turned green, and they drove on, the engine humming like a heartbeat that refused to quit. By the next morning, Cedar Creek High was simmering again. This time with something quieter than scandal, curiosity. Maybe respect. The incident with Tara had spread, but not in the usual poisonous way. Instead of mockery, whispers carried a different edge, one shaped by uncertainty. People weren't sure which side to stand on, and in that hesitation there was space for change. Ellie felt it the moment she stepped through the main doors. A few nods met her instead of stares. Someone held the hallway door open, a small gesture but one she noticed. In the homeroom, even Tara was subdued, her hair damp from a rushed shower, her phone nowhere in sight. Bryce kept his head down, the swagger drained from him. When the bell rang, the teacher announced that Principal Jennings wanted to see both Ellie and Noah in his office. A flicker of nerves passed between them, but they followed the summons. The principal's office was a tidy rectangle smelling faintly of coffee and dry erase markers. Jennings, a man in his 50s with calm gray eyes, gestured for them to sit. First, he said, folding his hands, I want to thank you for how you handled yesterday. You showed restraint when you could have escalated things. That's rare these days. Ellie exhaled, relief loosening the knot in her chest. Jennings continued, we've spoken with the students involved. The video's been permanently removed, and disciplinary action is being taken. But this has also opened a larger conversation about how our school handles inclusion, empathy, and digital responsibility. I'd like your help. Our help? Noah asked, puzzled. We're planning a community assembly next week. Walking together. We'd like you both to speak. Tell your story, your perspective. People need to hear it from someone real. Ellie's pulse quickened. I don't know if. You don't have to decide now, Jennings said gently. But think about it. Sometimes one honest story changes more minds than 100 rules. On their way out, Ellie said softly, you should do it. Noah raised an eyebrow. You should too. Maybe we both will. They exchanged a small smile, fragile but true. That evening, Mike sat at the kitchen table, polishing his old pocket knife, an heirloom from his father. The smell of chicken pot pie filled the room. An assembly, huh? He said after they explained. Sounds like a good kind of trouble. We don't want it to be about pity, Ellie said. Then make it about strength. Mike replied. Tell them the truth. The ugly, the brave, the parts that hurt. His gaze shifted to Noah. You've already done the hard walking. Let them see that. Later that night, Ellie sat in her room with the window open. Cricket stitched the dark with rhythm. She practiced lines under her breath. How to start. What to say. Everything sounded either too rehearsed or too raw. She pictured faces in the crowd, Tara's, Bryce's, the kids who had looked away. Somewhere between her rehearsed sentences, she heard her father's voice again. You don't keep it together. You keep showing up. Eventually, that counts as the same thing. She wrote it down on a sticky note, set it beside her alarm clock. The morning of the assembly arrived bright and cool. The gym had been transformed, folding chairs lined in neat rows, banners reading, walking together, building compassion through action. Parents, teachers, students, even a few local reporters filled the space. Ellie's stomach fluttered as she sat beside Noah in the front row. Scout lay calmly at Noah's feet, wearing a new red bandana that read Therapy Dog in Training. The principal opened with brief remarks about empathy, digital ethics, and community. Then he called their names. The sound of applause startled Ellie. It wasn't loud, but it was steady. They walked to the stage together, the wooden steps creaking slightly under their weight. Ellie looked at Noah, who gave a small nod. Go first. She faced the crowd, the microphone cold in her hand. A week ago, she began. I was ashamed of my brother. I didn't say it out loud, but shame has a way of showing without words. It shows when you look away, when you laugh at the wrong time, when you care more about what people think than about who's standing next to you. A hush settled. She continued, voice trembling but firm. What I didn't know was that 10 years ago, this boy I was ashamed of saved my life. He pushed me out of the path of a truck and took the hit himself. The limp you see isn't weakness, it's proof of what love can cost. A murmur moved through the audience, the sound of hearts turning. Noah stepped forward then, microphone steady. My sister's right, he said. But it's not just about us. Every day someone gets laughed at for how they walk, talk, look, or learn. Every day someone decides not to speak up because silence feels safer. I know because I used to hope people wouldn't notice me. But they did. And sometimes noticing is where kindness starts. He paused, eyes sweeping the room. So if you see someone different, don't just look. Walk with them. You might find they're going somewhere you need to be too. The gym was still. Even the air felt charged. Then came a ripple of applause. Slow at first, then rising, breaking open like sunlight. Ellie caught sight of Tara near the back. Tears she hadn't expected shining in her eyes. Bryce clapped too. Tentative, but real. Mike, standing by the bleachers, nodded once. Pride and sorrow mingled in his expression. Afterward, people approached them, teachers, parents, even students who had whispered before. Compliments, gratitude, awkward smiles. One older teacher said, "You reminded me why I started doing this job." Outside, autumn leaves swirled across the parking lot. Their color somewhere between rust and forgiveness. Mike opened the truck door for them, grinning. You two just hijacked an entire school's conscience. We told the truth, Noah said. Truth's the most dangerous weapon there is. Mike replied. And the fairest. As they drove through town, Ellie watched familiar places slide by: the diner, the hardware store, the old movie theater with its flickering sign. Life looked the same but felt altered. Like the light after rain when everything shines a little too bright. Dad, she asked. Do you think people really change? He thought for a moment. Some don't, he said. But most just need a reason. And what about us? We already did. Scout barked once in agreement. They stopped at the red light of Main and Willow. The same intersection that had rewritten their lives years ago. The scar of a faded tire mark still crossed the pavement. Mike drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. Noah looked out the window, expression unreadable. Ellie leaned forward. Can we get out for a second? Mike hesitated, then nodded. They stepped into the mild breeze. Traffic murmured by. Noah's limp was subtle now, more rhythm than flaw. They stood on the crosswalk together, the paint chipped but visible, and for a moment time folded the past superimposed on the present. Ellie could almost see two children again, one on a bicycle, one running to save her. Funny, Noah said softly. How the world doesn't remember what happens in one spot, but we do. That's how justice works, she replied. The world forgets. People don't. He smiled. And sometimes that's enough. The light changed to green, the pedestrian signal chirped. Scout tugged the leash, eager to move. They crossed to the other side, slow and deliberate, their shadows stretching long behind them. Ellie felt the weight of everything that had led here, the shame, the courage, the quiet fight for dignity, and realized that walking beside her brother no longer felt like redemption. It felt like home. When they reached the curb, she looked back once. At the fading intersection. And whispered under her breath a sentence she would carry forever. Some scars aren't meant to fade, they're meant to remind us where we learned to stand. The first frost arrived 2 weeks later, painting Cedar Creek silver before sunrise. The town felt quieter, softer somehow, as if the assembly had left behind an invisible hush. Ellie woke early to the smell of coffee drifting from downstairs and the faint crackle of the radio. Mike always rose before dawn, an old habit from his construction days. When she padded into the kitchen, he was already at the table, polishing his work boots, Scout curled at his feet. Mornin', kiddo, he said without looking up. You're up early. Couldn't sleep, she admitted, pouring herself coffee that tasted too bitter. Too much homework? Too much thinking. He smiled slightly. That's worse. Outside, the sun lifted slow over the fields, mist rising from the corn stubble. Ellie thought about how much had changed in such a short time. The school had started a mentorship program pairing upperclassmen with students who had disabilities or social anxiety. The video incident had become a case study in the digital citizenship course. Even Tara had joined one of the committees, though she kept to herself. People didn't transform overnight. But something in Cedar Creek had cracked open space for compassion to breathe. Noah entered the kitchen, hair tousled, brace glinting under his jeans. He grabbed a piece of toast, grinning. Morning, heroes. Mike teased. Dad. Noah groaned. Don't start. Fine. Fine. But you two made the local paper. Front page. Right under the headline about the new library wing. Ellie blinked. You're kidding. Mike slid the folded newspaper across the table. There they were, two siblings standing at the school podium, Scout at their feet, the caption reading, Walking Together, Students Inspire Change Through Story of Courage. Ellie stared at the image, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Guess it's official, Noah said. We're famous in a 50-mile radius. Fame fades, Mike said. Character sticks. That line echoed through her head the rest of the day. At school, teachers smiled more, hallways felt warmer. Bryce gave Noah a nod during gym, small but sincere. Tara stopped Ellie in the parking lot, her breath visible in the cold air. I wanted to say thanks, she said. For not ruining my life when you could have. Ellie studied her, noting the tremor in her hands. Just try not to ruin anyone else's, she replied. Tara nodded, eyes downcast, then walked away. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a beginning. Winter crept closer. By December, the town square had strung up lights around the gazebo, and the air carried the scent of pine and cinnamon. Cedar Creek's annual winter festival was the kind of small-town tradition that drew everyone: vendors selling cocoa, carolers in scarves, kids skating on the frozen pond. The high school band played on the steps of City Hall, brass notes bright against the cold. Ellie volunteered at the booth for the animal shelter, handing out flyers beside Noah and Scout, who had officially passed his therapy dog certification. The crowd adored him, Children knelt to pet his soft ears, and he soaked in every ounce of attention. He's the real celebrity, Noah said, watching Scout charm another group. Jealous? Ellie teased. Not even close. She smiled, rubbing her hands together against the chill. The sky deepened into a velvet blue sprinkled with early stars. Mike joined them, 2 cups of cocoa in hand. Your mother loved this festival, he said quietly. Used to drag me here even when the wind could slice steel. Ellie sipped the cocoa, its warmth spreading through her chest. You think she'd be proud of us? Mike looked at his children for a long moment. She already was. She just didn't get to say it enough. A brass version of Silent Night drifted across the square, and for a while they stood together, breathing the same frosty air. The mayor stepped onto the stage, announcing the start of the community awards. Ellie only half listened until she heard the words, "This year's Cedar Creek service recognition goes to," followed by, "Noah and Ellie Bennett." The applause startled them. Noah froze, cheeks reddening. Ellie nudged him forward. "Go," she whispered. "Before Dad cries." Mike snorted. Too late. They climbed the steps, Scout trotting between them. The mayor handed them a plaque shaped like the state of Ohio, engraved with a quote from Lincoln. "I am not bound to win, but I am bound to be true." Noah took the microphone reluctantly. "I don't know what to say," he began. "Mostly, thank you for listening, for changing, for proving that small towns can still have big hearts." He glanced at Ellie. "Also, my sister's the brave one, even if she'll deny it later." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Ellie leaned toward the microphone. "He's lying. He's the one who taught me what bravery looks like." The applause rose again, gentle but thunderous in feeling. When they stepped down, snow had begun to fall, slow flakes spiraling through the golden light. Scout tried to catch them, snapping at the air. The night blurred into music and laughter. Later, walking home under a canopy of stars, the streets emptying, Ellie felt a peace she hadn't known since childhood. The town looked different under snow, cleaner, quieter. She realized that the shame she once carried had melted into something else, understanding, maybe gratitude. At the corner of Main and Willow, they paused. The intersection shimmered faintly under the street lamp, snow gathering in thin white veins across the asphalt. Mike looked both ways out of habit, then said, "You know, I used to hate this spot, couldn't drive by without seeing that day over and over." "What about now?" Ellie asked. He smiled. "Now I see what came after." They crossed slowly, their boots crunching on snow. Noah's limp was nearly invisible in the soft powder, his gait matching hers in rhythm. Halfway across, Ellie stopped. "Wait." She crouched and traced a small heart into the snow with her glove. "For Mom," she whispered. Noah nodded. "She'd like that." Mike chuckled behind them. "She'd tell you it's crooked." "Then it's perfect," Ellie said. They finished crossing, Scout bounding ahead. The porch light glowed warm against the cold night. Inside, the house smelled of pine from the small tree they'd decorated the day before. The ornaments shimmered faintly, reflecting the soft yellow of the living room lamp. Mike hung the award plaque beside the family photos, next to one of their mothers smiling in the garden. "There," he said, stepping back. "Right where it belongs." Ellie touched the edge of the frame, her reflection mingling with her mother's in the glass. "Dad?" she asked. "Yeah? Do you think justice ever really evens out? Like, does the world ever balance what's been lost?" He considered this, eyes thoughtful. "No," he said finally. "The world doesn't balance. People do. One act at a time." She let the words settle, understanding them the way you understand a song you've heard all your life but never really listened to. Upstairs, she sat by her window, watching the snow deepen. In the streetlight glow, the flakes looked like sparks floating from some invisible fire. She thought of all the versions of herself, the one who hid, the one who hurt, the one who finally spoke. Somewhere between them was the person she was becoming, someone who understood that redemption wasn't about erasing pain but transforming it into something that could light the way forward. Downstairs, Noah strummed his old guitar, humming softly. The tune carried through the vents, warm and imperfect, like a heartbeat. Mike's laughter followed, low and steady. Ellie closed her eyes and listened. Outside, the town slept under its thin white blanket, unaware that within one small house at the edge of Main and Willow, justice had quietly done its work, not through punishment, but through love that refused to look away.